This is the Creative Market Free Goods Roundup for the week of January 25th, 2016. There are 6 different free goods this week, but they are free this week only. So if you see something you like when you watch this video, just check out the description below this video where you'll find links to each one of these 6 different free items. So first up here is Olesia, which is a font. The primary thing with this item is the font shown right here, and it's included both OpenType as well as TrueType font formats. So it's shown inside Illustrator right now, but also included are a ton of different floral elements, all in EPS format. I believe there are 52 of those in total. So I'm just going to quickly show you a couple examples of those floral elements, so you can get a good idea of what to expect across all 52 of them. Since 52 is so many, I'm not going to show them all, but hopefully these 3 give you a pretty good idea of what to expect with those. They're very nice and simplified representations of different floral things, so they should pair very nicely with this very scripty and fun font when you apply them around the letters or the words that you type out. So you can get a whole lot of additional versatility by using those. But I'm going to zoom in on the lowercase letters here first so you can see how these look. So as you can tell, this is a script font, and it also has a very nice handwritten style. All the letters flow together very nicely, and there's lots of little fun accents like on the C right here, where you have this kind of swirling element up at the top that just makes it look a little bit more hand-drawn and a little bit more playful in its execution than if it didn't have that. And overall, all these letter forms seem to work very nicely together and have a really solid flow between each other. And here are the uppercase letters, so these work quite nicely with the style of the lowercase letters above. And once again, these are just very fun, very flowy, lots of swooshing or swirling elements throughout all these different letters, like this M right here, where you can really see a lot of swoops going on. And this font also includes all the numbers 0 through 9, and then a small handful of special characters. So if I highlight this, go to type, and then glyphs sort of near the top here, you can see everything that's included in this particular font. So not a huge selection of different special characters, but all the basic punctuation is there, so you should be for the most part pretty good to go when you're using this font. And below that, I typed up Free Goods Roundup right here, so you can see how it looks typed up into a sentence. As you can see, all the letters flow very nicely together, and the space in between the words also looks pretty good. It does have a pretty decently large default leading, which is just the distance between the baseline of the different lines of letters here. If you want to change that and make these a little bit tighter together, you can go to Window and then Type and then Character at the very top. And leading's symbol is 2 A's with a line going from the baseline to the baseline of those A's. So if you make that something smaller than the default, which is automatically set, so I'll make this 60 point for example, you can tell it brings these much closer together in case that's a style you're looking for if you end up typing up multiple lines of text. But I don't think the stock one is all that bad either. It's just if you want to go in there and change that, that's how you can easily do that. But that's it for this font, and don't forget there are 52 different floral elements also included, which is pretty much enough stuff to be a resource pack on its own if they want it to be that way. So it's a really huge bonus on this particular font download. So if you like the font, or you like the floral elements, or perhaps you like both and you think you'll get some use out of them, just be sure to pick it up this week while it's still free. Next we have hand illustrated avatars. This is a collection of avatars in both Illustrator, EPS, and transparent background PNGs, and there are 20 female avatars and then 20 male avatars, and I have it opened up inside Illustrator here to show it. So I'll zoom in on the female avatars first, so you can get a good idea of how these look up close. So as you can tell, these have a very cartoony style to them. It almost reminds me a little bit of the comic Peanuts in its simplicity. Obviously these look different than that does, but nevertheless, that's what it reminded me of at first. And it isn't easy, for example, to change out different elements like hairstyles in these, but if you hit the A button on your keyboard to bring up the direct selection tool, you can click on something like the hair itself and then go to your fill palette and change the color to be something different if that's something you want to do. So changes like that are very easy, but if you want to swap hairstyles, stuff like that will be a little bit more in depth because the overall line work across the entire avatar itself is a solid object. So now I'm going to go over to the male avatars right here. So looking at these right here, you can see that there is a really nice selection of different avatars to pick from. So hopefully with these included different avatar sets, there's 20 females and then 20 males, so 40 in total. You'll be able to find avatars that'll closely enough match the people that you're trying to replicate, but perhaps if you're not trying to make these look exactly like someone specifically, then these should be plenty good enough to do that. And of course you can ungroup these and then use them on their own, or ungroup them even further in case you want to grab just a specific element. So if I end up releasing this compound path right here, I am able to pull off the nose even though this entire thing becomes black because I kind of broke the way it's working. But if I grab this nose and bring it up here to this guy who doesn't have a nose, you can see that you are able to move specific elements of different pieces off and then kind of recombine them as you see fit if you're willing to go through that little bit of extra work that it takes to do that. And of course, if you don't want to use Illustrator to do this, you could use the PNG files and move those around and perhaps edit them inside a program like Photoshop instead, which might make swapping around different pieces of faces a little bit quicker for you. But that's it for this pack. If you're on the lookout for some really fun cartoon style avatars, then this is a really great pack to pick up. Just be sure to do it this week while it's still free. Next up is Poster Frame Mockup. So this is a Photoshop mockup of a picture frame, and very quickly for the size, if we go to image size, the entire document is 1400 by 1400 pixels. So this is going to be best for displaying things on the web. And the really cool thing about this particular mockup kit is that the frame will automatically adjust to whatever scale or size of artwork you place inside of it. So to do that very quickly right here, there's a smart object layer inside the layers palette. If you don't see your layers palette for some reason, just go to window and then layers, sort of near the middle of that window, and then make sure that's opened up. And then right here it says place your artwork here. Just double click on the actual thumbnail itself, which will open this up in a new window. And just to show how this thing works and automatically adapts, as you can tell right now, it's in a portrait format, but if I want to make that into landscape, I can just move this over, change it into a landscape, maybe make it a little bit bigger and apply this effect. But you can go ahead and bring your own work in here by either copy and pasting in here, going to file and then place embedded up here or place linked. It doesn't really matter which of those two you do. And I'll just quickly stamp a few trees on here as well, so you can see that it is adjusting the artwork in real time. So once you have your artwork in here and ready to go, just hit Control S on a PC or Command S on a Mac to save it, and then you can go ahead and close this window. And as you can tell, it automatically adjusted the frame to fit the artwork shown right here, which is a really cool thing, and that it also applied my visual changes to the artwork. So in this case, it's just some modified artwork from what they did, but of course your own custom artwork would be displayed in here when you do that. So different ways to customize this if you want to. There's a layer at the top that says film grain don't touch, but you can go ahead and turn that on or off by clicking the eyeball, which if you look on the frame itself, there's some digital noise that might be hard to see in this video, but when you actually download this and do that, you will see the difference that makes. It says choose a frame, so there's a ton of different frame options inside this folder once you open it up. So just click the eyeballs on and off to apply those different frames, so you can see right here as I'm going here and doing that there are quite a few different visual differences between these frames. But of course, just go through and pick whichever frame you think looks the best for your particular artwork. So I'll just leave it on this one right here and go to the next folder. So there's a folder full of different extra things. So I'll open that up and apply these. There's one called Thin White Matte, which I actually almost cannot see whatsoever. But then there's one called a Thick White Matte, which if I applied that, you can tell it adds a pretty nice matted frame inside right here. There's also some hanging clips that go up here. You might have to just click on this folder and then drag these down a little bit until they're on the edge so it makes visual sense. Because if you change the overall orientation of the frame, these might have to be adjusted just a little bit. There's a folded paper texture that when you click that on right here, you can tell over the artwork, it makes your artwork look like it has been folded a bunch of times. And there's also a reflection option, which just adds a reflection. I'll turn off the paper texture so you can see that better. But the reflection is going right on a diagonal line right here across the frame in case you want it to look like that. And then there's also a shadows layer that's just a shadow around the frame itself. I think that looks pretty good, so I'm gonna leave it on, but you can turn that off if you want to. And there's 3 different backgrounds. So this is the default background right here, which is a pretty blank wall with a little bit of texture. There's also a wood panel version shown right here, as well as a brick wall texture that I think looks pretty cool with a much more sort of modern art gallery theme to it. That's it for this mock-up kit. It's really cool because I haven't seen one before that automatically adjusts to whatever orientation and size of artwork you place inside of it. So it does a very nice job of doing that and also looking quite realistic while making those changes. So if you want to display your work online and you're looking for a nice and professional way to do that, to perhaps show it in a more art gallery style context, then this will be a really handy thing to pick up and use. But if you want to do that, just be sure to do it this week while it's still free. Next we have Floral Vintage Digital Paper. This is a collection of 8 different patterns in JPEG format, so I have them opened up inside Photoshop here to show. And these don't actually seamlessly repeat, although there are a few that come quite close. So for example, this one and this one both seamlessly repeat quite well. And then if I can get over to this one right here, this one also repeats quite well, but like this first one doesn't quite perfectly seamlessly repeat, although it does get pretty close. So just keep that in mind when you are using these. And if I go to image and then image size, they're all 3600 by 3600 pixels, which will make them plenty big for pretty much anything on the web and most print applications as well. And also, if you spend the time to make sure that these do seamlessly repeat, then of course you can scale them up to be as big as they need to be to kind of fit whatever you want to use them on. So I'm just going to scroll through all the different options here, which range from floral like this to much more geometric patterns like these polka dot patterns right here, and then this one as well. And of course you can also hit Control U or Command U on a Mac to bring up hue saturation and change the coloration of these patterns if you want to do something like that. It's pretty easy to do. You can also adjust things like lightness and saturation to further customize the way these patterns look. If you're looking for some additional color options, that is certainly a way of doing that. And this is a really nice pattern that's sort of an abstracted take on leaves, at least in my opinion. And like I said before, this one does not seamlessly repeat, but I think it would be fairly easy for you to go in here and make this seamlessly repeat if you wanted to spend the time to go in there and do that. And this one right here is the same as the one previously, just with a stroked outline over the leaves. And this one right here is a really cool geometric pattern, and this one does seamlessly repeat, so you can feel free to expand this as big as it needs to be. And this one are basically the same pattern in different colorations, with the element being used in both of these, kind of reminding me of the symbol for wheat. And remember, you can change the color of these very easily if you want to do that to get a whole lot more versatility out of the color options that are presented initially. But that's it for this pack. There's 8 different patterns for you to pick from and use, and they should be plenty big for most projects where you want to go in and use them. And of course, you can spend the time to make these seamlessly repeat if the sizes shown aren't big enough for your projects. So if you like these patterns and you think you'll have some use for them, just be sure to grab this pack this week while it's still free. Next up is Hyalite, which is a WordPress theme. This is a portfolio theme for the WordPress content management system, so if you're a fan of WordPress and you're on the hunt for an online portfolio, then this one might be worth looking into for you. And it's also fully responsive, so it should look good no matter what kind of device you're viewing it on. And I'll very quickly just go into one of these different photos. This is the main page right here, and as you can tell right here up at the top is the main navigation. There's a little bit of room for type, the portfolio images below that, and at the bottom here we have the footer with some different social links as well as who it was made by. So if I click on this image of a Schwinn bicycle, for example, it brings up this Lightbox image gallery that I can then scroll through and look at all the different images as I want to. So this is a nice way to navigate. Alternatively, if you don't want to click image by image, when you're done, you can just exit out of it. There's an actual projects page, which gives you the option to put different categories in, so branding, typography, and web. So you can really break up your portfolio to just display things that make the most sense for those things. And when you click on one of these on the actual portfolio section, it brings up a large page to show off just that item. So this is a really nice way to display nice and big images, and it also shows you what it's published in. So this will say web, since this is featured in a website. You can also scroll forward and backwards through this as well by using these little buttons at the bottom here. So that's another nice way to navigate if you want to do that. There's a blog section, which is nice and clean. So I'll go ahead and scroll down here a little bit, and you can of course click on a specific title for a blog post, which will bring you to that specific blog post page where there's plenty of room to go in and write more stuff or place images. In the features section, it just shows different features that this particular theme offers. So things like author profiles shown right here. There's also full screen headers, which are kind of a popular thing right now in case you want a really nice and big photo to open up on your website. There's different post formats that show you what you can do. So things like audio, gallery, images, as well as quotes and videos. And also kind of a neat thing about this particular theme is it does have a playlist player, so that's kind of a cool bonus if you're a musician. And under styles, there's just different styles that you can go ahead and apply to this particular theme. So this is the general styles. There's more specific styles like headings, as well as some really nice type effects if you want to have some quoted things off to the side, as is shown right here. And as you can tell, it does a very nice job of handling images intersecting with the type, as this example shows. And then I'll go up to the styles once again and go to advanced styles, which is just different column layouts as well as call out styles. So there are quite a few different style options you can customize with this theme to make sure that it looks good for what you're trying to show. And with the amount of different textual stylistic options it has, I think this theme would also work well for writers or people that are doing a lot more written content and perhaps want to sprinkle a few images in there as well. So just because this is a portfolio theme, don't forget that it could also be a portfolio theme for writers or other different creative mediums as well. But that's it for this theme. It's just nice and simple in its execution. It does a pretty good job of showing off the actual projects themselves, and it also does a nice job of making it very easy to go in and group things up by categories and then just explore things based on those categories. So if you like this theme and you've been looking to build your own portfolio or perhaps just update an existing one, then just be sure to grab this one this week while it's still free, and hopefully you'll find it really useful. And last up is Grungy Textures Background. This is a collection of 26 different photographic textures in JPEG format. Since 26 is so many, I just selected 5 at random here to show to give you a pretty good idea of what you can expect if you download the entire pack. And first up, I'm going to go to image size so you can see how big these are. The size does change through these, but this should give you a good example. So this one is 4600 pixels wide by almost 3500 pixels high, so these are plenty big for most applications where you're going to want to use them on. And the textures are largely of painted objects, just like this right here, and then zoomed in quite a bit so you can really see some of the chip textures like the paint chipping off, as well as like this rusty nail or whatever that happens to be. And I'm going to keep on going through some of the different options here so you can get a good idea of what you can expect across this entire pack. So there is quite a few different textures that you can pull from and use. Stuff like these cracks in this paint or drywall or whatever the case might be for what this is can be really nice to overlay on posters or different type elements if you want to give them kind of a cracked or roughened feel. And this one right here has some pretty nice diverse textures, from this cracked line right here to the actual wood texture that you can see beneath the chipped paint here, or even just the chipped paint edges, which might come in useful if you're trying to mask something out and make something useful out of that. So here's the last one I'm going to show. This one's just a little bit more simple, and another way you can get some use out of these if you want to make them black and white to get some just really rough or harsh textures is hit Control U on a PC or Command U on a Mac to bring up hue saturation, and just bring the saturation all the way down. Alternatively, you can go to Image and then Adjustments and then Desaturate, which will do the same thing essentially, and then hit Control L on a PC or Command L on a Mac to bring up the levels, and take this middle bar right here and just drag it off to the right, and then take the far right bar and start dragging that a little bit to the left until you keep on moving these just a little bit until you get a pretty nice and contrasted texture right here. Since this one didn't have a ton of stuff going on in it, it might not be the best example for this one, but you can get a good idea of how you can quickly change these to be a really stark black and white texture if that's something you prefer. So if I just quickly do that on this one right here so you can get a good idea of what this one might look like when you go in and do that, you can start to get a feel for how easy it is to pull off some really cool cracks and textures from these photos in a much harsher way that might translate a little bit better to printed stuff that you're applying it to. But that's it for this pack. If you're on the hunt for some really good textures of paint cracks and chips and different chunks of wood that's heavily textured as well, then this pack might come in really handy for you. Just be sure to grab it this week. So that's it for this week's free goods, and do remember they are free this week only. So if you saw something you thought might be useful, just check out the description below this video where you'll find a link to download it. And as always, if you found this video helpful, please like and favorite, and if you want to see this video every week, please subscribe. This video is released every Monday to let you know it's free this week on Creative Market. Thanks for watching.